Peru's President Martin Vizcarra to be investigated for corruption charge once he leaves office next year. In Chile, recent polls show that 84% of citizens support a constitutional reform. In Lithuania, citizens take to the polls to vote in general elections. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Gladys Quesada. Bolivia is set to hold presidential elections in 7 days, but concerns are growing up about whether de facto authorities will step down peacefully if the movement towards socialist party were to win. On Saturday, thousands gathered in the city of El Alto to greet left-wing candidate Luis Arce, who has been front-runner in all opinion polls and could possibly win in a first-round victory. Also, recent polls have shown that 50% of all Bolivians do not trust the electoral authorities to be transparent. This comes just days after de facto president, as well as the interior and defense ministers, said that they will not allow the MAS party to return to power.
We will beat all the other candidates next Sunday with more than 50% of the vote. They know this. They know we won. They know we are the strongest political force in the country. That is why they are calling for tactical voting. They are saying there will be a runoff. They are wrong. The Bolivian people know they cannot make the wrong choice.
And Peru's Attorney General Office has announced that President Martin Vizcarra will be investigated for alleged corruption once he leaves office next year. The announcement was made after the anonymous witness accused the president of receiving $1 million in bribes. In return, Vizcarra allegedly approved public contracts related to the Odebrecht corruption scandal. According to the witness, the payment to Vizcarra was made in 2014 when he was the governor of Moquegua. A statue of Christopher Columbus has been removed from one of Mexico City's main avenues. While the government says they will remove it for restoration purposes, many believe it was removed because of public outcry, as it celebrated one of the instrumental figures in the genocide of indigenous people, which took place in Latin America over hundreds of years.
I don't agree with having that kind of monuments on the street because I think they represent oppression, or some kind of repression that was present in that era. So for me, there should be other kinds of monuments that represent other types of thinking rather than having these types of people on a monument that idolize them, when they were people who didn't do good for people in their time.
The Paraguay River has reached its lowest level in half a century after months of a strict drought. According to official figures, 85% of the landlocked nation's foreign trade depends on the river navigability. The drought has so far caused significant cost overruns for the transportation of fuel, fertilizer and food, while also highlighting the limitations of Paraguay's access to drinking water. The nation is also battling a number of wildfires, with the government of Mario Abdo Benítez already having declared a national emergency.
No cambia, ¿qué es lo que va a pasar? Esto va a ir empeorando y sus consecuencias en nuestras vidas directamente van a ser cada vez peores. Como ya estamos viviendo esta sequía tan extraordinaria que no ha ocurrido en los últimos 50 años y no cambia, ¿qué es lo que va a pasar?
Prime Minister Arthur Keith Rowley says he was not briefed of the plans by the European Union to blacklist Trinidad and Tobago, among other Caribbean nations, but he was not surprised. Rowley qualified the move as part of the course.
I myself led a delegation to Washington to complain and to explain our circumstance where these decisions are made about who is blacklisting whom and who is withdrawing correspondent banking and de-risking our banks and so on. And in the case of the EU, labeling us as, what do you call it, offshore money laundering dens and so on. These are just par for the course how they treat us, small countries, but we do talk back and cover ourselves in international regulations.
And we'll take a short break now. We will be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. A recent survey in Chile shows that 84% of citizens support a constitutional reform. According to the poll, over 8 million citizens said that they are ready to vote yes in the referendum set to take place in 2 weeks. The ballot will ask citizens whether they accept a proposal to redraft the dictatorship-era constitution, a demand that became the rallying cry for the massive social unrest movement that started a year ago. In Colombia, student organizations held a day of solidarity in support of the social minga that has mobilized protests in the systematic killings of social leaders. Demonstrators condemned the rampant violence in the department of Cauca, highlighting the lack of interest shown by authorities to implement the 2016 peace agreements. Around 800 indigenous people are taking part in the social minga mobilization, which set out from the departments of Cauca and is headed to the city of Cali, where they hope to have a meeting with President Iván Duque. Former guerrilla commander Cesar Montes has arrived in Guatemala after his arrest in Mexico. Montes, whose real name is Julio Cesar Macías López, is charged with killing of 3 soldiers in 2019, leading of a state of siege declaration by the government in 22 municipalities, and to him being declared Guatemala's most wanted man. The former leader of the rebel armed forces and the Guatemalan Army of the Poor, 77-year-old Macías López, was living as an average civilian with his relatives in Mexico before police arrested him.
There are 2 arrest warrants for different crimes, one for murder, the other for illicit association, and the other for aggravated usurpation.
At least 8 people died after building collapsed in Lagos, Nigeria. The National Emergency Management Agency reported that 3-story building was still under construction when it collapsed. Rescue operations are still underway. The collapse comes amidst growing accusations that some local construction companies allegedly bribe regularity agencies to get away without implementing strict building rules. And the Nigerian government has dissolved the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, calling the SARS, the unit after days of protests against police brutality. Authorities announced the SARS officers will be redeployed to other law enforcement departments. The unit had been accused of harassment, unlawful arrests, torture, and extrajudicial murders. Thousands of people marched across Nigeria this week to demand the dissolution, and demonstrations continue as citizens want justice for the victims.
Number 1 trending in Nigeria right now is end police brutality in Nigeria. Yeah, justice for Jimo, who was actually killed as well. Congratulations, Nigerians. Breaking news, let Buhari. So everything that's trending on Twitter right now has to do with the end SARS movement. So it's really, really exciting to see that Nigerians are gathering together for a good cause.
You see, this is not the first time the government have been banned SARS. They have banned it. This is 3rd time now. At the end, they'll soon come up again. So for me, it's not acceptable. Let the government, let them scrap the unit SARS. You can see the masses are not happy. Nobody's happy about the SARS. SARS have been killing us in Nigeria. Especially when you go to SARS, you see them shooting innocent Nigerians.
Voting has come to a close in Tajikistan presidential elections. The Central Election Commission has announced that vote counting has been already started in 70.7% registered voters participated in the ballots. Preliminary results are expected to be announced on Monday.
The latest elections for the president of Tajikistan were held transparently and openly, and with the active participation of observers from 6 in the morning to 20 in the evening. The free elections were overseen by 159 international observers.
More stories coming up, so don't go away. Also taken to the polls to vote in general elections. Voters have to choose 141 national lawmakers in an election that came as the country fights a sharp rise in COVID-19 infections. According to the Central Electoral Commission, about 2.4 million registered voters are expected to take part in the voting.
Everything will be great if young people are elected. The old ones has been sitting there long enough.
People are showing in these first days that they want change and they are not satisfied with the last 4 years.
And we go now to the United States. Our collaborator Abby Martin has the latest details on the current situation of the upcoming November 3rd presidential elections.
This is Abby Martin with your weekly election update for TeleSUR English. For as long as I've been voting, progressives have been lectured about the need to engage in the politics of lesser evilism. As the years went by, the candidates got worse and worse. Where now, in 2020, we are faced with the choice between two of the oldest nominees in U.S. history, Joe Biden, objectively a center-right political insider, and Donald Trump, a far-right extremist and reality star extraordinaire. The last 4 years have been surreal and incredibly dystopian, but this year takes the cake as one of the craziest. Let's just zoom in on the last month in election news. 3 weeks ago, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, culminating in the moment liberals have been scolding us about. See, for 2 decades or so, a gun has been pointed to the heads of progressives, telling us that this election, like every election, will come down to a woman's right to choose. They say, if we allow the Republicans to take control of the courts, Roe v. Wade will be overturned, setting us back an entire generation of progress. And in fact, that very scenario is unfolding right before our eyes, with Amy Coney Barrett, an anti-choice religious cultist, being pushed through by Trump right before the election. When actually faced with a fight to stop the extremists from seizing the highest court in the land, the Democrats just roll over. The so-called resistance party should be laying their bodies on the line to prevent this handmaiden lady from being appointed. All of a sudden, it's no longer an election issue. Instead of using their leverage, like, I don't know, trying to shut down the government or promising to pack the court, Democrats have simply given up and are just hoping for the best. I guess it's no surprise considering Trump has already appointed a record number of lifetime federal judges, more than any other president at this point, and Democrats vote to confirm them 40% of the time. 2 weeks ago, Trump held a Rose Garden ceremony to celebrate his third SCOTUS nominee. And in the throngs of a global pandemic, sat people like sardines on top of each other, barely any wearing masks. Turns out a dozen or so people from the event became infected with COVID-19, including Donald Trump himself. And the next week was wild with media speculation, everyone uncertain if Trump, a 74-year-old who lives on McDonald's and Diet Coke, was at death's door. He served a brief stint in the hospital before making a cinematic return to the White House, visibly gasping for air like a goldfish out of a bowl. But don't you dare wish him ill. Only thoughts and prayers, please, for a speedy recovery for the cartoon authoritarian at the helm of U.S. empire. The same person who wishes harm on his political enemies and threatens constant violence on the left with every utterance deserves nothing but our respect, guys. After the Democrats prayed him back to good health, he took to Twitter to downplay the virus and brag about his top-tier medical treatment, while tens of millions of Americans live in fear of getting sick because they have no health insurance. The election has now reached peak absurdity, with Trump running on the idea that he is immune to COVID-19, that it's nothing to worry about, that his catastrophic inaction is justified. You would think it would be a cakewalk to run against this man. All Biden needs to do is put a plan in effect to deal with the pandemic and give some semblance of relief to everyone suffering economically. But Biden is such a terrible candidate that his victory is far from certain. His entire campaign has been that he's not Trump, touting support from conservatives while slamming Bernie's base at every turn. The first debate between them was a hot mess, too. with Trump dominating every second with an endless string of lies, while Biden stammered his way through, trying to make a point. He couldn't even combat Trump's non-answer on the horrendous handling of the pandemic or the issue of election integrity. 215,000 Americans dead, and an economic crisis should have been a slam dunk for the Biden camp. And now, still plagued with a highly infectious disease, Trump is refusing to debate unless he can infect Joe Biden in person. So as of now, the next debate is canceled. Polls are neck and neck in battleground states, but things could still take a dramatic turn as COVID continues to ravage the White House and the president.
Corporate bankrupt declarations in the United States are growing at an alarming rate as a result of the crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. As of the first week of October, 509 companies have filed for Chapter 11, exceeding the number of filings during any comparable period since 2010. 54 companies went bankrupt in September alone, matching the number of filings in August. The news comes as economists have predicted that unemployment rate in the U.S. this year could reach historic highs, none since World War II. Also in the United States, a train has derailed and caught on fire near Atlanta, prompting officials to evacuate some residents from their homes. The train, with about 107 cars, including 3 locomotives, ran off the tracks in Atlanta suburb. It's unclear what exactly the train was carrying, but officials said their fire involved hazardous materials and were continuing atmospheric monitoring after evacuation orders were lifted around 6 a.m. local time. The train staff managed to get the safety and no injuries have so far been reported. In Austria, the incumbent Social Democratic mayor of Vienna, Michael Ludwig, has won local election, retaining his position. Preliminary results show that Ludwig's Social Democratic Party of Austria came first with 42.5% of the vote. He is expected to pick a coalition partner from 5 other political parties to form his new government. According to projections, Vienna's far-right party, Strache, led by former Vice-Chancellor Heinz Christian Strache, did not pass the 5% threshold that needed to enter the city parliament.
For 2 years, my goal has always been to achieve the same results as my predecessor, Michael Harpo. That was a very good result in 2015. The way things are looking now, I'm going to beat that very good result. Therefore, I'm very content. I thank the people of Vienna who put their trust in me. And over the next 5 years, I'm going to try and win the trust of those who didn't vote for me.
And polls have closed in northern Cyprus elections. Vote counting has started after the completion of elections to set a new leader for the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Polling stations closed as scheduled at 6 p.m. and the Electoral Commission said 55% of registered voters managed to cast their votes. Portugal has recorded its highest number of COVID-19 cases since the start of the pandemic. Close to 2,000 new cases were reported over the past 24 hours. Portugal has been seeing a steady rise in new infections over the past 6 weeks, reaching a total of over 8,600 confirmed cases and over 2,000 deaths. Belarusian police have violently detained protesters and used a water cannon as weekly opposition marched against the re-election of the president. Riot police swiftly detained 39 people at protest march in the capital Minsk on Sunday after President Alexander Lukashenko raised hopes for change but meeting jail opposition figures. The opposition hailed this as a sign that Lukashenko is seeking some compromise with the protest movement. However, authorities on Sunday ordered a reduction of mobile internet service and sent military vehicles into the center of Minsk. And we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, you can join us on social media in Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada, so thank you for watching.